I was in the kitchen, piping cream cheese frosting onto cupcakes, when I heard my name, followed by a sentence that made my hands stop mid-squeeze. "Let Riley pay the rest of the renovation. Once the money's in, we cut her out." I didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, cupcake half frosted, as my chest tightened like a fist had closed around it. It was my mom's voice, smooth, matter-of-fact, the same tone she used when booking a salon appointment. Then came Naomi's voice, my sister. "She won't even ask. She's just happy we included her." I leaned back, slow, careful not to knock the tray. Their shadows moved casually through the hallway, 2 wine glasses clinking between quiet laughter. They didn't know I was just 10 feet away, listening, not to gossip, but to a plan. They weren't talking about me, they were talking about stealing from me. I'd paid $67,000 into this house, into the business, into their dream, and all along they'd been drawing the map to push me out. I wasn't building something with them, I was financing my own disappearance, but I didn't confront, I didn't cry. I just smiled, finished the cupcakes, and decided, let them finish their party. I'll start my plan. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the upstairs guest room of the house I helped restore, staring at the ceiling fan I paid to install. It spun slow, steady, silent, just like I'd been. That's what hurt the most, not the betrayal, not the money. The fact that I let it happen, that I trusted them enough to hand over control, to believe I had a real stake in this thing we were building together. The boutique inn had been Mom's dream, her way of staying busy after retirement. Naomi pitched the idea over wine one Thanksgiving. Let's take the old family house and make it something special, a mother-daughter legacy. I was the only one who had the cash, the skills, and the connections to make it real, so I poured in everything. $67,000 from my savings, plus nights and weekends drafting plans, sourcing materials, and hauling lumber when no one else showed up. I'd left behind a 6-figure job at a design firm in Austin to move back home to Asheville, gave up my condo, put my business on pause. I told myself this was the next chapter. I didn't know I was walking into a script that had already been written, without me in the final scene. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened. Naomi breezed into the kitchen in silk pajamas, holding a coffee she hadn't made. "The cupcakes turned out so cute," she said, already scrolling on her phone. "You're seriously a magician." Mom followed, adjusting her hair with 2 fingers, inspecting the dining table I'd built by hand. "Can you wipe this again? It's streaking. We've got people coming at 6. People, not family, not friends, just people, potential investors, Naomi's fiancé and his parents, Instagram guests and micro-influencers they were hoping to charm into promoting the family-run, women-owned inn. Everything looked charming on the surface. Rustic wood beams, modern lighting, lavender-scented candles by the windows. No one would see the cracks, the debt, the lies. I wiped the table. I smiled, and I kept my mouth shut. Because I realized something that morning. They'd underestimated me. Completely. They thought I was too loyal to fight back, too grateful to ask questions, too desperate to walk away. They didn't know who they were dealing with. That afternoon, I stepped out to grab fresh basil and drove straight to my old lawyer's office. I hadn't spoken to Grant Jacobs in over a year, but when he opened the door and saw me standing there, hair tied back, no makeup, jaw tight, he blinked twice, then stepped aside. "This about the house?" he asked. I nodded. I thought something felt off when the deed came through. I froze. "Wait, what deed?" He pulled up a file on his monitor. "The property was transferred 3 months ago. Sole ownership, Naomi Langston, signed by your mother." The blood drained from my face. "I never signed that." "You weren't listed," he said gently. "I had no legal ownership, no equity, no protection. I was a ghost. And they were counting on me staying one. That night, while they toasted with champagne and took staged photos in front of the new fireplace, I was in the attic, flipping through old invoices, bank transfers, and permits. Every payment was in my name. Every zoning update, tax filing, and remodeling request had my signature. I wasn't just a contributor, I was the reason the damn place existed. But that wasn't going to be enough. I needed proof, not emotion, not outrage. Proof. So I started collecting. Emails, screenshots, bank statements, photographs of receipts they thought I'd lost, messages from contractors confirming I'd paid in full. And every night, after they went to bed, I opened my laptop and updated the master folder. Asset theft, working file. By day, I was still the helpful older sister, running errands, fixing wobbly furniture, calming Naomi when the coffee machine acted up. By night, I was a documentarian of betrayal. The moment everything snapped into place was a week later, when I walked past the office and overheard Naomi on a Zoom call. "Yeah, once she's out, we rebrand. No more Ellison Inn. It's gonna be Langston House. Sounds more upscale." I didn't flinch, didn't react, just turned, walked outside, and let the cold mountain air burn the inside of my lungs. They were erasing me in real time, not just from the finances, from the story, from the name. That night, I emailed Grant and attached 17 files. "Tell me what I need to do next." The plan came together faster than I expected. We'd wait until Naomi's birthday, just 10 days away. A perfect crowd. Her fiancé, his business associates, local press. I wouldn't shout, I wouldn't cry. I'd show receipts. While Naomi spent the next week planning a photogenic party, I stayed quiet. When Mom asked me to prep the guest rooms, I did. When Naomi sent me her branding notes, I smiled and said they looked great. I kept baking, kept smiling, but every fork I laid on the table was another nail in the coffin of their plan. Because they thought I'd just take it. They didn't know I was building something else entirely. Not a business, not a brand, a reckoning. They had no idea I was watching them. Every, "Hey, can you fix this?" Every, "You're so good at the business side." Every eye roll behind my back when I asked about the branding files or budget. I kept smiling, kept my voice steady, because they still thought I was in the dark. The truth? I was miles ahead. By the end of that first week, I had a hard drive labeled Project, Exit, over 200 files cataloging every transaction I'd made for the inn. Licensing paperwork, proof of tax payments, contractor emails, voice memos, zoning forms, all under my name, all without theirs. Naomi and Mom hadn't just left me out of the deed. They'd left a paper trail they didn't think I was smart enough to follow. I'd also installed an app on my phone, one that records audio when voices are detected nearby. Legal in North Carolina, as long as I was present, and I made sure I was always around. The recordings were gold. "Naomi, once we're fully booked, she's out. She can go back to whatever artsy stuff she was doing before." "Mom, she won't leave. She has no one else. We just have to be patient." They didn't know their deadweight daughter was building an archive of every lie they whispered, and I wasn't going to waste it. The next file I added was a message from my old friend Nate, an interior contractor and business inspector I'd worked with back in Austin. I asked if he could fly in for Naomi's birthday weekend. I didn't explain why. I didn't need to. "Send me your docs," he said. "If this is going where I think it's going, I'm in." I sent him everything. He replied 2 hours later with a list of suggestions: legal backup, witnesses, press. He even offered to bring his GoPro and record everything just in case. For once, I didn't brush off help. I said yes, because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about being erased from my own story and writing a better ending. The irony was, Naomi's party was shaping up beautifully. Guests were flying in from New York and LA. Mom had coordinated the catering down to color-coded trays. Naomi had ordered custom balloons, rented a Prosecco wall, even hired a photographer for a full content reel. They called it the Langston Legacy Dinner. No mention of the Ellison name. I guess I'd been deleted already. Perfect. Let them put on their show. I was working on the finale. The only moment I nearly lost my composure was 3 nights before the party. Naomi asked me to look over the guest list and confirm headcount with the caterer. I opened the shared document. My name wasn't listed, not as host, not as team, not even as a sibling. Just a blank line under miscellaneous support. I stared at it for a long time. Then I printed it out, added it to the folder, and highlighted the words with a red marker. Proof of exclusion, proof of intent, and I kept going. The next day, I met with a local business attorney, Rachel Ford. Nate had recommended her. Her office was in a tiny stone building downtown, tucked behind a row of boutiques. No flash, no ego, just sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She listened as I walked her through everything, quiet, expressionless. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. You've got them. Clean. If we filed today, we can freeze the property under an emergency injunction before the party. You'd stop the transfer cold. I shook my head. Not yet. She raised a brow. I want them to walk straight into it. No warning. No way out. A pause. Then she nodded slowly. Then let's prepare your mic drop. Back at the house, I was a shadow in my own life. Polishing glassware, fluffing pillows, folding napkins. Naomi barely looked at me anymore. Mom said thank you without actually seeing me. They thought I was fading out, but I wasn't disappearing. I was tightening the frame. I spent the final night before the party in my old childhood bedroom, surrounded by printed files, labeled folders, and a thumb drive with 2 backups. At 2:13 a.m., I wrote the final script for what I'd say during the party. Not too emotional, not too aggressive. Just the truth, delivered with calm precision. Because they needed to see exactly how much damage they'd done, not by screaming, but by watching me stay composed while their world collapsed. The morning of the party, the sky was clear and sharp, blue like cut glass. The backyard was already set, the archway, the string lights, the white chairs in neat rows. Naomi was in full glam mode, getting her makeup done upstairs. Mom was pacing the kitchen, giving final instructions to the caterers. I walked in carrying the tablet. They didn't ask what it was. They didn't even look up. Of course they didn't. By 6 p.m., the yard was filled. Music played softly over the speakers. Guests sipped champagne and took selfies under the Langston Legacy banner Naomi had hung near the gazebo. They posed. They mingled. They admired the place I'd built. And none of them knew what was coming. I waited until the last dessert plate had been cleared. Then I stepped onto the platform behind the birthday cake, tapped a spoon gently against my glass, and said, "Before we raise our glasses, I'd like to say a few words." Mom turned, confused. Naomi narrowed her eyes, but it was too late. Naomi blinked at me from across the lawn. She looked confused, irritated. Mom froze mid-sip, her wine glass hovering just beneath her lipstick. The guests went quiet. I stood on the platform beside the birthday cake, tablet in one hand, wine glass in the other. Steady, unshaken. "Before we celebrate Naomi tonight," I said calmly, "I just want to thank everyone for being here and share a little story." I tapped the tablet. The outdoor speakers cut the music. And then it played. Naomi's voice, clipped but clear. "Once she pays the full amount, we remove her. Riley's just the funding. She doesn't belong in the brand." A few people turned their heads. Then my mother's voice followed. "We don't even need to mention her when we finalize the transfer. She'll think she opted out." Naomi's face drained of color. The recording ended. A few gasps. One man muttered, "Wow." Still, I kept my voice level. "For those of you who don't know, I invested $67,000 into this property. I designed the remodel, paid every contractor, filed every permit. You're standing in a space I built, by hand. I believed we were creating something together." I turned slightly toward Naomi and Mom. I was wrong. The tension in the yard was suffocating. Naomi opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mom stepped forward like she might try to salvage it. "Riley," she began, "this is not the time." I cut her off with a calm smile. "It's the perfect time. You wanted an audience, right?" I turned to the guests. "I apologize for the interruption, but I've learned that when people plan to erase you, the least you can do is show up for your own disappearance." No one laughed. No one moved. I pulled out a folder from my bag and handed it to the man standing nearest to Naomi's fiancé. Inside are full financial records, dated transfers, contracts in my name, receipts, inspection reports. Everything Naomi and Deborah claimed credit for came from me. More murmurs. I watched Naomi's fiancé step back from her slightly. I was never meant to be here tonight. My name wasn't even on the guest list, but that's okay, because now everything's exactly where it belongs. That's when the lawyer showed up. Rachel Ford, dressed in a black dress and blazer, walked calmly to the front with a small manila envelope in hand. She handed it to Naomi. "You've been served. Emergency injunction. Until this is resolved in court, the business assets and property are frozen." You could hear the oxygen leave the party. "All branding, digital accounts, and bookings will be suspended until rightful ownership is determined," Rachel continued, her voice professional and precise. "Any attempt to transfer or modify business operations will be considered fraud." Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Naomi stepped back like the folder was radioactive. "This is insane," she whispered. I tilted my head. "No, Naomi, this is clarity." Guests began to shift, unsure whether to stay or disappear. A few quietly grabbed their coats. A woman whispered something to her husband before they walked toward the gate. Mom tried again, her voice cracking under the pressure. "Honey, can we just talk?" I nodded. "Sure, through my lawyer." I walked off the platform slowly. My hands didn't shake, my heart didn't pound. Everything I'd rehearsed played out exactly as I needed it to, not for revenge, but for justice. As I passed Naomi, she reached for my arm. "Riley, please, this is my birthday." I leaned in close so only she could hear me. "You had every day before this one to choose family. You chose money." Then I kept walking. Back in the guest house, I shut the door, kicked off my shoes, and let out the longest exhale of my life. No screaming, no chaos, just facts, paperwork, planning, and one hell of a party ending. The music never resumed. The guests had come expecting champagne toasts, curated Instagram moments, and a photogenic celebration of family success. What they got was something entirely different, a raw, live broadcast of betrayal. Naomi's party ended in stunned silence and scattered gasps. I didn't watch it fall apart in real time. I watched from the window of the guest house. People left in waves, quiet voices, side eyes. A few of the guests peeked at the tablet I'd left on the platform before someone shut it off. Naomi's fiancé stood stiff near the buffet table, unmoving, while his parents walked off without saying goodbye. His mother whispered something sharply in his ear before they stepped into their car. And my mom? She just stood there like the ground had given way beneath her. Back inside the main house, the lights stayed on far too long. I imagined them scrambling, trying to delete things, redesign their version of the truth. But the reality was already out, not just in sound and paper, but in the eyes of everyone who had witnessed it. The Langston Legacy banner hung crooked now, half dropped from one corner. It felt appropriate. I let the scene breathe for an hour. I made tea, took off my shoes, sat cross-legged in bed and listened to the quiet. Then came the knock. "Riley," Naomi's voice called from the other side of the guest house door, forced calm. "Can we please talk? Just you and me. Like sisters." I didn't answer. I took a sip of tea. She knocked again, more urgently. "Come on, don't do this. You blindsided me. You embarrassed Mom in front of everyone." Another sip. I said nothing. Then the voice hardened. "Seriously? You think this makes you better than us?" I thought it made me free. The knock didn't return after that. Around 1 a.m., I got a text from Mom. "Mom, I hope you're satisfied. That was cruel. You've shamed this family." I stared at the screen, then turned it off. No apology, no regret, just embarrassment that they got caught. Typical. By morning, the house was a graveyard of party remnants, glitter stuck to the hardwood, half-drunk wine glasses still on end tables, a cake no one had touched. The Langston Legacy was over before it started. I walked in without saying a word. Naomi was on the couch, hair messy, eyes swollen. Mom sat at the kitchen table holding a mug she hadn't touched. "You'll be hearing from Rachel later today," I said simply. "The court's going to review the filing this week." Naomi scoffed. "You seriously think a judge is going to hand you this business?" "I don't think," I said. "I know, because you never protected your lies with paperwork." Her voice rose. "You came into this with nothing. We gave you purpose, Riley." "No," I replied, my voice calm. "You gave me the chance to prove how easy it is to destroy people who mistake kindness for weakness." They didn't get it. They still saw me as the helper, the soft one, the background character. Even after everything, even after the recordings, the documents, the legal freeze, they couldn't imagine I'd actually win. That was fine. They'd realize soon enough. Later that day, Rachel forwarded me a message from Naomi's lawyer, an attempted counterclaim. Laughable, no evidence, no paperwork, just accusations that I had acted without consent and was emotionally unstable. They even tried saying my presence was toxic to team culture. Rachel's reply was 3 sentences long. "You've submitted no evidence of contribution. My client has supplied 147 separate financial entries, 39 permits, 3 licenses, and 5 signed contractor statements. We're confident in court." I smiled when I read it. Let them scramble. Let them try. They'd spent so long counting on me to carry everything. They forgot what happens when the one holding the weight decides to drop it. The next blow landed 2 days later. Naomi's fiancé pulled out of the engagement. His parents had seen enough. He sent her a 3-line message via email, told her they were no longer aligned in long-term values. His parents were concerned about transparency, and he'd canceled his stake in her rebrand idea. Naomi screamed loud enough to rattle the windows. I didn't react. That same afternoon, 2 of her business contacts unfollowed her publicly and posted vague tweets about watching someone sabotage their own team out of greed. The story was already spreading, and I didn't lift a finger. 3 days later, I met with a local reporter who'd attended the party. He reached out asking if I'd be willing to share the full story behind the inn. I agreed, on one condition: anonymity. No names, no location, just the facts. He agreed. The article dropped the next week. Invisible Partner: How One Woman Was Cut Out of the Family Business She Built. It exploded on social media. Thousands of comments, shares, DMs from women saying, "This happened to me." Messages from people who knew exactly what it felt like to be used by the people you loved most. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. The legal process wasn't instant, but by mid-spring, the judge ruled in my favor. Naomi and Mom were ordered to remove all use of the Langston brand. I retained full rights to the property under a new LLC Rachel helped me create. The business bank accounts were frozen, reviewed, and restructured. A new public notice went out announcing the official change of ownership. The inn had a new name: Ridgeview House. Quiet, warm, no family names attached. Just mine. I didn't throw a grand reopening. I didn't need to. I just got to work, renovating a few rooms, hiring 2 part-time staff I trusted, and turning the guest house into a workshop. Business picked up slowly but steadily. Guests liked the personal touch, the honesty, the warmth, the absence of curated lies. They asked me what made me start it. I always smiled and said, "Family," then changed the subject. The morning after the judge's ruling, I drove to Ridgeview House before sunrise. Fog still clung to the trees. The mountains looked like ghosts behind gray clouds. I parked out front, took a slow breath, and unlocked the main door. Not as a guest, not as support staff, as owner. The new deed sat in my glove box, stamped and notarized. Legally and officially, this place was mine now. Inside, the hallway smelled like cedar and faint lavender. I ran my fingers along the wooden banister I'd built with my own hands last fall, the one Naomi once said was a little too rustic for our aesthetic. Funny how "our" never actually included me. Now it didn't include her at all. Rachel had advised me to expect backlash. She wasn't wrong. At 8:17 a.m., I got the first voicemail from Mom. "Riley, what the hell did you do? My bank account's frozen. I tried to buy groceries this morning and the card got declined. You've taken this too far." Then a text from Naomi, a minute later. Naomi, you're legally insane. I'm going to bury you in lawsuits. Another one, 20 minutes after that. Naomi, I talked to a different lawyer. You can't just own the house. You're not even family anymore. That last sentence made me pause. It didn't hurt. It landed like truth. They weren't my family anymore, not in the way that mattered, and I was finally okay with that. By noon, they escalated. 3 missed calls from blocked numbers, 1 voicemail that ended with Mom yelling in the background, an email from Naomi titled, Financial Abuse and Coercive Control, Legal Notice. I forwarded it to Rachel. She replied 5 minutes later. Empty threat. No grounds. They're trying to scare you. Stay the course. That night, I sat on the back porch of Ridgeview House, legs up on the railing, glass of wine in hand. I watched the sun dip behind the hills. Gold and lavender stretched across the sky like the edge of something new. Inside, the phone buzzed again. Blocked number. I didn't answer. The next morning, I served them both with restraining orders. It wasn't for revenge. It was for peace. Rachel filed them under emotional harassment, supported by text messages, voicemails, and social media posts Naomi had made claiming I was ungrateful, manipulative, and unstable. The judge didn't even flinch, approved both, effective immediately. They couldn't contact me, couldn't show up, couldn't even message me through friends, and they'd get fined if they tried. That was the day everything truly got quiet. No more rage texts, no more guilt voicemails, no more threats disguised as concern, just stillness. A week later, a delivery truck showed up unannounced. The driver stepped out, holding a clipboard. You, Riley Ellison? Yep. Got a storage unit clean out from a Deborah Langston, says it's your stuff. He opened the back, boxes, 15 of them, labeled in marker, Riley, college, Riley, photos, Riley, tools, miscellaneous, junk. One was labeled unclaimed. Inside were the last bits of me they'd kept around like a forgotten attic bin, high school trophies, broken headphones, a quilt my grandmother made when I was 10. No note, just leftovers. I signed, tipped the driver, and brought the boxes inside. Then I lit a fire. I kept the quilt, burned the rest. The town started talking. People chose sides. Some stayed silent. A few neighbors nodded at me a little longer when I passed on morning walks. One local florist slipped me a note with my bouquet. We always knew who did the real work. Others unfollowed me online. I noticed old family friends deleting comments or quietly removing tags. Fine, let them go. I wasn't cleaning up my reputation. I was cleaning out my life. Naomi tried again. Through a burner Instagram account, photos of her looking reflective by the ocean, vague captions like, "Sometimes people will twist your love into weapons." Then a message from that same account, "You'll regret this when you realize you have no one left." I reported it, blocked it. Rachel added it to the file. That weekend, I reopened Ridgeview House with no cameras, no press, no fanfare, just fresh sheets, clean mugs, real warmth. 3 couples stayed that weekend. One left a note in the guest book. We've stayed in a dozen places across the Blue Ridge. This was the only one that felt like someone wanted us here. It made me cry, not out of sadness, out of relief. People could feel the difference. You can always tell when something's built with love, and when it's built with lies. I started using my evenings to sketch again. Furniture, lighting, tiny cabin plans I'd never finished before life got messy. Every morning I made coffee and sat on the front porch. Sometimes I'd see a car slow down when passing the house, someone from town, maybe someone looking for drama. But no one stopped. The world kept moving, and so did I. On a Thursday afternoon in late spring, Rachel called. "I just got word from Naomi's lawyer," she said. "They're dropping everything. No appeal, no claim, no contact." I waited for the rush, the celebration, but it didn't come. Just a long, soft breath. Like I'd exhaled something that had been stuck inside me for years. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to teach them a lesson. I wasn't chasing justice. I'd found something better, peace. It felt strange at first, waking up without weight on my chest. No unread texts filled with guilt trips, no bank alerts from shared accounts, no errands to run for people who called it help while they slowly erased me. Just coffee, a porch view, a breeze, freedom, in the quietest form. I didn't throw a victory party. I didn't post photos or change my profile bio to business owner period. No passive-aggressive captions. No selfies holding the deed. That's not what this was about. It wasn't revenge. It was release. When I finally framed the new Ridgeview House ownership papers, I didn't hang them in the lobby. I put them in the back office, on the shelf. Quiet pride, not for show. Every time I walked through the main hallway, I felt it. Not in the paperwork, but in the air. This place wasn't haunted anymore. I repainted Naomi's old branding wall, took down the fake family portraits, replaced them with local art. I updated the website myself, clean, simple, welcoming. No bios, no big claims. Just photos of the space, handwritten notes from guests, and a small line at the bottom. Built with care, run with heart. Bookings doubled in 2 months. People said it felt real. Because it was. I moved out of the guest house and into a cozy apartment 10 minutes down the mountain, a place with huge windows, a clawfoot tub, and enough space for a workshop. It wasn't big, it wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I bought a secondhand drafting table, hung string lights in the corner, built my first bookshelf from reclaimed oak. Every nail, every cut, every varnish stroke reminded me of who I'd been before I let people treat me like a backup plan. I wasn't a sidekick anymore. I was the author. A few weeks later, a package showed up on my doorstep with no return label. Inside was a photo album, all my childhood photos, loose Polaroids, old-school portraits, birthday pictures. Tucked in the back was a note in Mom's handwriting, "These belong to you." I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything, really. I just closed the album, placed it on the shelf next to the deed, and moved on with my day. Some apologies are too late. Some wounds don't need reopening. Let the past stay folded in the pages. One Saturday, I hosted a small dinner in the Ridgeview dining room. Just friends, a couple from the neighborhood, 2 old co-workers who'd driven up from Atlanta, my former contractor, Nate. Even Rachel came. We ate by candlelight, passed around homemade food, told stories, laughed without rehearsing. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to perform. Nobody asked about Naomi. Nobody asked what I planned to do next. They were just there, for me. No transactions, no schemes, no manipulation hiding behind smiles. Just real people, real warmth. After dessert, Nate raised a glass. To Riley. For doing the hardest thing most people never manage, walking away from people who use you even when they share your blood. Everyone clinked their glasses. I didn't make a speech, I just nodded. Because there was nothing left to explain. By midsummer, I was fully booked for 2 months out. Couples, solo travelers, a pair of artists doing a retreat. One of them told me, "This place has soul. You can feel it in the walls." I smiled, not because it was a compliment, but because it meant I'd done something right. I started sketching again, more than I had in years, not for clients, for myself. A small A-frame cabin in Vermont, a modular studio you could build on a trailer bed, furniture lines made with reclaimed barnwood. I wasn't chasing approval anymore, I wasn't asking for permission, and without all that noise, the ideas flowed. Naomi posted once more, a filtered beach photo, caption, "Rebuilding from scratch, watch me." I didn't look twice. Her rebuild wasn't my concern. I had no desire to compete with her anymore. Because I wasn't in her game, I wasn't even on her board. I thought I'd feel bitter, lonely, vindicated. But mostly, I just felt clear. There was space in my life where shame used to sit. There was time for joy where anxiety used to live. And slowly, without force, something unexpected returned. Hope. On the first crisp day of fall, I took a drive into the hills. No destination, just the hum of the engine and the red-orange blur of leaves racing past. I pulled over near a lookout point I hadn't visited since high school, got out, climbed onto the hood of the car, and for a long time I just sat there, breathing in air that didn't feel heavy. No guilt, no fear, no expectations, just peace. Fall deepened. Ridgeview House settled into its rhythm. The air turned crisp, leaves crunched underfoot, and guests started requesting hot cider in the afternoons. I added hand-knit blankets to the guest rooms, hung soft lights along the porch rail. No more filters, no fake branding, just comfort, simplicity, peace. Exactly what I'd never had in that house when Naomi and Mom controlled it. Now it pulsed with something new, warmth. People started calling me Ms. Ellison when they checked in. It always made me smile, not because I needed the formality, but because I'd earned it. One evening, a woman checked in alone. Her name was Dana. She looked tired but kind, the kind of tired that doesn't come from a long day, but from a long life of being ignored. She wandered into the kitchen while I was steeping tea and asked if I owned the place. "Yeah," I said, kind of accidentally, but yes. She smiled. "Feels like a place built by someone who had to fight for peace." I didn't say anything, just handed her a cup. Sometimes silence says everything. A few weeks later, I visited my father for the first time in years. He'd retired quietly to a cabin near the Georgia line after leaving Mom, not long after the whole disaster blew open. He welcomed me at the door with a stiff hug, the kind of hug from a man who isn't used to showing feelings but was trying anyway. "Glad you came," he said, his voice gravel and regret. We didn't talk about Mom. We didn't talk about Naomi. We talked about wood, about running wiring through cold floors, about the sound of a good circular saw. When I left, he handed me a small wooden box. "I made it for you," he said, not meeting my eyes. "From walnut." Inside was a compass, real brass, heavy in my hand. "So you don't forget you already know the direction." That night I cried, not out of grief, out of healing. I got an email from Naomi around Christmas. I recognized the tone right away. Guilt dipped in manipulation, dressed up as vulnerability. "I've been reflecting. Therapy's helping. I hope someday we can talk, woman to woman." I read it once, then archived it, not out of spite, not out of anger, out of peace. Some people can change, some can't, and some changes just come too late. By New Year's Eve, Ridgeview House was fully booked. A group of quiet artists, a pair of newlyweds, a travel blogger who left me a handwritten thank you note. This place healed something in me I didn't know it would, but it did. That was enough. I didn't need headlines. I didn't need applause. I didn't need to win. I'd already won, because I'd stopped asking people who broke me to help me rebuild. The world didn't change, but I did. I learned that silence can be power when it's chosen, not forced. That peace isn't something you wait to be given. It's something you build alone if you have to. And that sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's the beginning of getting everything back. If you'd asked me a year ago what I wanted, I would have said, to be loved, included, appreciated. Now, I want peace. I want space to grow. I want laughter that doesn't come with conditions. I want a home filled with people who don't keep score. And I have it. One night, I stood on the porch with a mug of cider in hand, the Ridgeview sign glowing gently in the background. The moon hung low over the hills. I thought of the $67,000 I spent, the years I gave, the names I was called, and then I thought, they didn't take anything from me. Because now I had something they never did: integrity, boundaries, and freedom. If you've ever been used by the people closest to you, if you've ever felt erased from your own life, know this: you are not weak for walking away. You are not selfish for drawing a line. You are not cruel for cutting off people who only come close when they need something. Sometimes the strongest love is the one you give yourself when no one else does. Thanks for being here. Subscribe for more real stories of healing, strength, and quiet revenge. Drop a comment if you've ever walked away from family to protect your peace. This is Secret Revenge, and we don't scream to get even. We rebuild to win quietly.